What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast, and a very special one indeed, as we are reviewing the latest Marvel Studios film, The Marvels, and I personally had a hell of a great time. Joined, as always, by my great friend and amazing co-host. Wait, I was supposed to do that the other way around, messed it up, but that's okay. Adam Blevins, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. You know, despite all the recent discourse, I think it was a pretty good weekend to be a Marvel fan with the Loki finale and then the Marvels. And I'm super excited to get into the ladder with you guys, man. I can't wait.
And I'm happy you mentioned that because we will be live again tomorrow, aka Tuesday, talking the Loki episode 6, the finale breakdown with heavy spoilers live again. So make sure you tune in for that one. But today we have an incredibly special guest, author of MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, podcast host of Trial by Content, and so many more. Marvel superfan, my Ben Riley brother, Dave Gonzales. How you doing?
It's good to be back where I don't get laughed at for talking about the Clone Saga, which definitely happened to me in Texas this weekend. But yeah, it's like to talk about the Marvels. It's always good to have another chapter, and this will be, I guess, we're going to take a gap year next year. So third Marvel movie this year, that sounds great.
We got a gap year next year, but at least it's a very, very big one. That's going to be pretty exciting. I actually had a cool Spider-Man tidbit story that I wanted to tell on air before we begin. I was at the mall this weekend with my wife looking for some maternity clothes, and as I'm just kind of like sitting there waiting and she tries stuff on, a little girl was looking at the back of my phone case and saw that it was Iron Man, and she was like, "Oh, I love your phone case." So I said, "Oh, cool. Who's your favorite superhero?" And she said, Spider-Man. And I said, "No way, me too. Who's your favorite Spider-Man?" And she went, "Miles Morales." And it just made me so happy to see that like somebody really young is fully embracing Spider-Man at a young age, just like we were. But their Spider-Man is Miles, and that is so, so cool to see. But we're here to talk about the Marvels. So if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're watching us on Twitch, thanks so much for joining us live. Say what's up in chat. If you got any questions for Dave, feel free to let us know. He may or may not answer, but you can ask them. Let's start diving into the Marvels. Oh, also make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. But first things first, just kind of spoiler-free general thoughts. Adam, what did you think about the film?
You know, I had a really good time with it, I'll say. I don't think it's perfect. I have some complaints that I'm sure we'll get into later. But overall, I mean, I don't remember the last time that I had just like this much pure fun, like watching a movie, and especially with the chemistry of these three, like watching them. I don't know. Like, I'm spoiler free. I'm looking at the agenda and seeing all these things we're going to go into. So I'm trying not to be too specific. But overall, while it's imperfect, I did have a really, really good time. And I don't know, this is like lands somewhere in the middle for me in terms of like how excited I was, because it's like or in terms of like expectations, I'll say, because I was super excited kind of like a while back, and then when we heard about the runtime and all this stuff, I was a little skeptical, and then it like landed somewhere right in the middle where I think I was probably a little overly skeptical, but I was also like a little too excited in the beginning. So somewhere right in the middle for me.
I feel very similar to our friend of the show, Aaron Perrine, co-host of Phase Zero and over at comicbook.com. He said that he thinks this is the most fun he's had at an MCU movie since Spider-Man No Way Home. And I don't know that I disagree with that. I think it might have been that for me as well. Maybe not I don't think the best movie since No Way Home. I think that would be Guardians or Wakanda Forever. But maybe the most fun I've had at a theater since No Way Home. Dave, what did you think?
No spoilers for the Marvels, but spoilers for this podcast. At the end in the notes, it says overall ranking out of 10 and compared to the MCU. So I was like, when was the last time I ranked the MCU? And I did. And the Marvels is like surprisingly around the middle. I actually think that we need more 90-minute entries, especially if we're going to continue spinning out into an era where people think they need to do a lot of homework. I think this is a great way to say, like, no, you could have a movie that can move at an entertaining clip and have all the action and, private return of sky portals to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and still have a good time at the movies, which ultimately I think is what they need to do if they want to reclaim some more clout at the box office. Just give me a good time.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the box office about this movie is its own thing, and I don't think we really need to spend that much time getting into it. There are box office analysis podcasts, but they didn't get to promote the movie. It'd be doing a heck of a lot better if they did. It's still the number one movie in the world right now, and shout out to Nia DaCosta for also for seating her defeating herself to once again become the highest grossing black female director of any movie in an opening weekend. So shout out to Nia DaCosta for that. But I really did have a lot of fun with this movie. I admittedly could have used a little more runtime, but I would say that about everything, just because I could watch any Marvel character sit and do nothing and just talk with their friends, and I would be incredibly happy. But diving into the movie, like outside of the characters and the cast, Adam, you brought it up. You had a few flaws, and one of them for me was like a lot of the just quick edits, a lot of quick scene transitions of one into the other that I could have spent a little bit more time with. But other than that, I enjoyed the score. I enjoyed the movie as a whole. That one little bit of quick things was like just a small flaw that I had.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think some of those quick edits were a little jarring at times. And to me, even sometimes, and it's been 4 days now since I've seen it, so it's not quite as fresh in my mind, but there were some times where we cut from one scene to another, and I was like, wait a minute, this feels like it's contributing to the hour 45, because it feels like there was maybe supposed to be another scene kind of transitioning us to there, and we kind of just were jumping around back and forth a lot. But ultimately, it didn't really bother me all that much. I mean, I agree with you too. The score and the cinematography were great. I was actually surprised. Now I go into a lot of MCU movies, admittedly really skeptical about the visuals, and then I go into this, where this is this giant space adventure with three women with very visual effects oriented powers, and I was like, oh man, like I really hope we don't get into some of these fight scenes and they just look terrible. And to be honest, like all the space stuff, the powers, I thought it looked great. I know there's been some complaints going around about that. I guess maybe I'll need another viewing to kind of see some of that stuff, but I didn't really notice it the first time. But overall, for these three things, yeah, no problem, except for just like some of the weird editing, like you said, quick cuts. And I don't know whether it's some of the stuff for Miss Marvel's dad. Not even sure about his name. I know he's got some controversy surrounding him, or some of the Secret Invasion stuff, or like that's not there in case there was going to be any of this stuff that's just didn't make it in. It definitely felt like there was a few kind of cutouts that they just didn't bother to fill in with anything else. They're just like, you know what, this is close enough. We'll just move it into the next scene. But I don't know. Ultimately, it didn't really bother me that much.
Yeah, and I mean, from that standpoint, if I have to pick and choose, I would prefer, based on what we've seen from that actor, I would like to have them not maybe cut. I'd like them to cut out as many of his scenes as possible. And then additionally, I'm very happy they didn't include anything about Secret Invasion, because that's legitimately like the one Marvel project that I like. I don't have any good things to say, really. The acting was incredible. But like that's the only Marvel project that I didn't like thoroughly enjoy. Dave, what did you think about the cinematography for the Marvels? How did Nia DaCosta do from a directing standpoint? And just in general, what were your thoughts on basically the things outside of the acting and the plot?
Yeah, I think they definitely prioritized the clip of having a propulsive narrative, and because of that, there are some cuts in between scenes that feel a little weird. Yes, I can't say for sure because I don't have any inside knowledge, but the feeling that some things went on a little bit longer given how much they were set up. But I will say where it benefits from a very clean bit of cutting is a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe fight scenes sort of improved after like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when they realized how to do hand-to-hand combat in like a thrilling way. And we've been growing out of that as our heroes have been getting more and more powerful. So what Adam was saying about having all these heroes that have special effects powers, I was really worried we were going to have like fight scene choreography issues where I wouldn't know what was going on, or like, how many things were happening at once. But I do think for the majority of the fight scenes in this, because it's based around them having to switch powers, specifically when they use their powers, once they're in sync, I really enjoy the amount or how the fight scenes were choreographed, considering they're like four of the most powerful people we've seen sharing the screen at any given time when they're fighting Dar-Ben. So I think that's very successful. And then I do think that the chemistry between all the actors sort of helps smooth over some of the editing hiccups that I had overall. So I think as a directorial, considering that even Nia DaCosta has said this is basically like a Kevin Feige production, what she was able to accomplish as a director, I think was very noteworthy and again fun. We keep using it, but it's very true. Once you see the movie, you'll realize why even the negative reviews have the word fun in them. It seems.
And it is I've saw the Guardians twice in theaters. I think I saw Wakanda Forever 3 times. But I also think this is the first one since No Way Home that it's like I'm dying to go back. I want to go back and see and like actively see this movie again. And that's something I'm really excited about. On a side note, Dave, I'm curious how your podcasting life has changed, like since how much more cognizant of your words do you have to be now that MCU the Reign of Marvel Studios has come out? Just I don't have knowledge of this, like I'm just speculating like you, because you probably didn't have to worry about that near as much beforehand.
Yeah, it's not as bad for me as it is for like Joanna Robinson, my other co-author, who has to talk about this much more frequently than I do. And occasionally she'll say something that she thinks and it'll get like, picked up on a Reddit thread or become disseminated as like Joanna Robinson confirms, like soft reboot after Secret Wars. And we were like, no, we were on a Comic-Con panel and said that would be an interesting idea. But
I was sitting there, I was like, I was in that Comic-Con panel. They didn't say that. That didn't get said.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to do my best. But again, what's the fun if I'm watching all of my words? So I'm not worried about it too much.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you can check out our interview with Dave, Gavin Edwards, as well as Joanna Robinson up on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page and wherever you get your podcast, where we dive deep into MCU, the Reign of Marvel Studios, alongside our fellow agent Carlos, who's in chat right now with a really funny comment. It would have been my favorite movie ever if the first time we saw Fury, he just said, I had the strangest dream about a secret invasion of Skrulls. And then it never gets mentioned again. And just, they never acknowledge it in the MCU after that. And heck, maybe you can bring Emilia Clarke back and bring back some of the great cast, but then just not acknowledge anything that happened in that movie whatsoever. And but back to the Marvels, any good journalistic, good-willed review that isn't just a hit piece trying to go at this movie complements the chemistry between Kamala Khan, Carol Danvers, and Monica Rambeau. It's truly the highlight of the movie. We get to see Iman Vellani just go full Kamala Khan, fangirling over Ms. Marvel, and every single moment I just loved, because it truly felt like what any of us would be like if we actually got to meet a superhero in real life. We got transported to another dimension and then bam, there was a superhero. Adam, what did you think about the dynamic between the 3 stars of this movie?
Oh, well, it's the best part of the movie by far. This is the reason that you go see this movie. I mean, and like you say, it's amazing what Iman Vellani is able to do with Kamala Khan. And it's like, if I'm not mistaken, this is pretty much like the only acting role she's ever had in her life, playing Kamala. And she's in a scene with like,
wasn't even an actor, was just like, hey, I am Miss Marvel, and then now she is in the written word, in movies and everything,
right? And it's like she's in scenes with Brie Larson and Tiana Paris, like holding her own and like acting right there with them as somebody that was just like that. That's talent right there, and that's something that they could have like spent so long trying to find the right person to play it based on like talent, but you just can't find that. Like it's one of those things like with Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man and Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Like she was born to play this character, and that comes out in this movie just as much as it did in the show. But like seeing the 3 of them together, this is my favorite part, and it's also one of my complaints, like selfish complaints. I don't think we got enough of them, like of the 3 of them just kind of hanging out like on a ship. Like that scene, I think halfway through the middle of the movie when they're starting to figure out. I said halfway through the middle. That scene in the middle of the movie when they're like trying to figure out their powers and the switching elements and stuff, and they're just like chatting it up on the ship and hanging out. I'm like, more of this. Make the movie selfishly like an hour longer and just give me like another hour of this, of them just hanging out. And we didn't get as much of that as I would like, because we, pretty quick after we get something like that to just kind of spend time with them, we've got to move right on to the next big thing. I get that in an hour 45 movie, that's just going to be one of the things. But that these 3 were the best part of the movie by far. And I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. I mean, you can tell from the trailers, they had really, really great chemistry, and that comes through on the screen throughout the entire movie. I mean, I don't want to spoil, or we don't go into the ending too early, but it's like, I'm also a little disappointed by that because I'm immediately coming out of this movie like, I just want another sequel, show anything with the three of them. Like I want more of the three of them. Like they're great.
That's exactly it. What I loved about this movie is we get to see Carol be Carol and Brie Larson be Carol Danvers and Ms. Marvel for a long time. Whereas 2/3 of the Marvels, she is playing a different character basically because she doesn't know who she is. Dave, what did you think about the dynamic between the three of them? Was it also the highlight for you?
Yeah, I think my first text messages coming out were just Iman Vellani and a star emoji because it's like really at some point she has a very difficult lift in this movie because she is the main one of the trio who actually wants to be part of a team. Like she knows right from the get, like we could be a team, it'll be great. Like not only is Carol Danvers like her idol to begin with, but like as she clicks with Monica Rambeau as soon as they're like in the living room, it feels like. Uh, talking about how cool the new iPad is in the movie. But yeah, I love all three of them together, and I think even though it feels like we could use more, that's really a testament to how each of these actors use their full arc, and they're like, well, but assume people haven't seen half of it. Now complete that same arc. So the fact that Carol is as self-punishing as any of our inaugural Avengers about when she gets something wrong, they get depressed for like 5 years. We've seen it happen to Hawkeye. We've seen it happen to Black Widow. We've seen it happen to Captain America. Everybody who survived the blip. And it turns out Carol Danvers was no different. She made a mistake and has been punishing herself somewhat needlessly, as we realize as we sort of finish out her arc with Monica Rambeau. Monica does a great job, and Tona Paris does a great job picking up from like, it was a witch hex. Don't worry about it. I'm here to also deliver a whole bunch of exposition that is basically gobbledygook, but through my acting acumen and my ability to communicate through facial expressions, you'll feel not only the substance of the gobbledygook, which sets up, jump points, it sets up entangled powers, it sets up a whole bunch of backstory that at first she's just telling us, and then we get to see some glimpses of, and then finally, circling back to Iman Vellani is just the bright center who there's a lot of times where even if she's supposed to be sad or she's dealing with serious things, she deals with it with like a positivity that I hope is what is actually happening in Gen Z, where it's like they're not as jaded as somebody who's seen the blip or somebody who's realized the insignificance of your life in the face of something like Wanda Maximoff is just able to be like, why can't we save everybody? Or like, I'm very sorry this happened, but we're going to make it better. That sort of like glowing center of positivity is what I hope she brings to every other Marvel project going forward, because we have some very depressed people on the roster and they need some more Miss Marvel in their life.
Don't we all? I think that's exactly it. The part that we're talking about where it's like, I could have used a little bit more. It's because the three of them together are just straight dopamine rushes. Like they're just straight positive chemical reactions in our brains. And we're all just so depressed right now that it's really beneficial to get that little boost. It's like a nice text message. Bing. It boosts you up for an hour 45 at a time. My prediction now, if we're all still podcasting about Marvel 20 years from now, we're going to come back to this clip right here. And I think that one day, because of how she is this megastar who really had nothing to do with acting, she just wanted to play this specific character. She's now writing the character of Miss Marvel for comics. Iman Vellani will one day have Kevin Feige's job.
I would love that.
Maybe not to the same extent of a business perspective, but Iman Vellani will one day be the head creative mind behind the future Marvel Cinematic Universe, or just Marvel Studios in general, whatever that looks like in a day and age. That's kind of what my prediction comes to.
Yeah, I love that. Give her a producer credit on the next thing and let her be part of like a rewrite session and work her way up that ladder. Maybe she's a business genius. The only way to figure that out is to let her be a business genius. So
she's
her
great at everything else so far. We might as well just
why wouldn't she be a business genius?
That's a great point. The great another interesting tidbit in chat. MTF and Carlos both talking about the double dutch scene, about how that was so enjoyable, and another one that maybe could have been extended. The one thing I would have liked to see a little bit more of, and this transitions into our next talking point of the villain of the movie, Zawe Ashton's Dar Ben. Big weekend for that couple, with Zawe Ashton obviously being the main antagonist in the Marvels, and Tom Hiddleston having his finale come out the exact same day. But a lot of the reviews I've seen basically just say, like, I had so much fun. The chemistry between the three of them was super dynamic. Had a few editing issues, and I would have liked to see a more from the villain. The villain was a little underwhelming. I found I was more whelmed, shout out to Dick Grayson, with the villain, because I don't think, now they partially kind of, they toyed with this a little bit of, like, when she's got the bangle on, it just fuels the bangle. It doesn't, or the quantum band, which I want to get your take on this after, Dave. Are these basically just the MCU's nega bands, and they wanted to just use a different name because they use quantum for everything? But anyways, when she has that band on, Carol's powers don't work, so it kind of nerfs Carol's powers a little bit, which you basically have to do because it's impossible to write a villain that can face up with Carol Danvers and go toe-to-toe with her, especially when she's got Monica Rambeau and Kamala Khan by her side. And so I actually don't think they should have tried to lean into specifically Dar Ben more. I think they should have leaned in and they did a good job of it. I think they, sorry, MTF had a comment in chat, and it got me scared that I said something I wasn't supposed to, but he was just commenting on the word in general, and I lost my train of thought. But somebody help me out. What was I on here? Okay, Dar Ben, right. You can't do a face up. You can't do a face up antagonist for Carol Danvers. And so I think of instead of expanding more on her, they should have leaned into more the Annihilator Carol Danvers and the perspective of how that is for the Kree, how that looks for the Kree, Dar Ben's perspective, other Kree's perspective. And even though we've seen the Kree as the villains, almost do the reverse of Captain Marvel and be like, there's a lot of innocent lives lost here. A couple shitty people up top doing really shitty things, the accusers, et cetera, but also a lot of innocent people there. And I think they should have leaned into that a little bit more, so that it's kind of clearer why Carol Danvers feels this guilt and why she feels like she's a bit of a villain, and why she hates that name, the Annihilator. She says, I don't like that to be called that. I don't like that name. Don't call me that. And I think they should have just leaned into that a bit more, because you can't have an antagonist that matches up to Carol Danvers. So instead, make her look like the antagonist to this whole population of people, and have her get the redemption arc as your third act. Adam, what did you think about Dar Ben?
Well, she was by far, I'll just come out and say it, the weakest part of this movie for me. And the two things that stand out the most are, so what's her entire point? What's her thing? It's, oh, you decimated my planet. You took all this from me. I'm coming for revenge. I'm coming back. I'm coming for everything. I'm going to destroy everything you care about, that kind of stuff, which is one of the most common
Very Mysterio.
tropes. Yeah, one of the most common tropes in villainy. And then not even that, what happens at the very end? What's the one thing she's been chasing the entire movie? She needs the other bangle. She gets the other bangle, and then it ends up being her destruction. That's like also one of the most common things in villainy. The very thing that they've been chasing the entire movie ends up being their destruction. I was just like,
very Aladdin tricking Jafar into turning into the genie.
All right. Very good comparison there. But I definitely would have, I would have liked to see more. I think you made a good point too about the Annihilator, because when I'm watching some of these flashbacks, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, is there an interesting movie in here? Like some kind of prequel, like a sequel to Captain Marvel, but a prequel to this movie, kind of going over everything that happens. Because they threw a lot at us just in like 5 to 10 minutes of flashbacks. Probably not even that much, just like 2 to 3 minutes of flashback scenes with everything that she was doing. And I'm wondering, I'm like, not that I would advocate for less of this trio and to push that back into the future, but I'm watching that thinking, like, I wonder if this movie hits harder, like both the villain and kind of like more sympathizing with Carol, if we got to see more of that as opposed to just like 2 to 3 minutes in flashbacks. I think so. I don't want to like rewrite all this stuff and say I could have done it better. That's not at all what I'm trying to do. But I don't know. I think they definitely had some problems with that. I wasn't particularly compelled by Darby. I think Zoe Ashton's a fantastic performer. I think she's great in this movie. But like for the character, she would definitely be probably in the bottom 4 to 5 of my MCU villains. It just seemed very cookie cutter, very kind of standard. And like, while I was like, yeah, sure, I see the point you're making, but I was like, I've also seen this point like in this exact franchise like 10, 15 times now, maybe. So it's wearing a little bit thin.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Dave, what were your thoughts on the character, and how did you think these MacGuffins compared to their comic counterpart?
Oh, on the first question, the second time I saw it, I actually a lot more of Darben fell into place for me because she seeks out, the power of the quantum band, and her first deal is to make what seemingly is an actual deal with the Skrulls on a Skrull refugee planet, because she's going to take the atmosphere because she needs to restore Hala, which is great. But then Carol gets involved, and she has like the opposite problem of what Carol has in this movie, which is like Carol's like, I did something bad. Until I make it right, I can't be nice to myself. And Darben's like, until I stop the person that destroyed my world, I shouldn't have to be nice to anybody else. I'm obviously the victim here. We don't know when that flashback takes place, where she destroys the Supreme Intelligence and screws up the atmosphere and everything. We know that what triggers the Civil War, and we did see a prequel of sorts because Ronan was out there being the Civil War side of the Kree in Guardians of the Galaxy. People were like, "Don't do this," and he's like, "No, like the Kree are never going to bow again." And so, if you remember, the Captain Marvel ultimately took place in the '90s. There are a bunch of moments where it's like, this has been going on. Same thing with the Skrull relocation. It really should have been settled by now, except nobody can just like give in to or get over their own egos. And so, even though the funny thing is, I don't know how deep into spoilers we are yet, but at several points in the movie, someone tells Darben there's a way to do this that isn't what you're doing. And she still chooses like, no, I'm going to try to unite both the quantum bands. And that's her undoing. And is it all of that fleshed out in text? I think it's sort of like nodded to, and we get those flashbacks, so we have to fill it in. But it really felt like we're back in phase 2 of villains for me, where it's like the villains are just here. What's their job? Oppose heroes. And so all the focus in this movie is on when Darben opposes it. And there is a great performance, but then also a lot of times it just has to be like this smirk that she's finally going to get the person that destroyed her society, which, I would understand. We as American hunted Osama bin Laden for like way too long of a time, just destroying everything in our wake. So I do think she's slightly more sympathetic the more you look at, or maybe on a rewatch when some of the things sink in that just fly by so quickly in the first one. But it's like every time someone gives her an option to be better, she, like Ronan, chooses power. And Kree and purple power, man, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, no kidding. Was basically just Ronan the Accuser with the Power Stone in that one. But I think MTF makes another great point in chat. One thing I wish they had dealt with was in addition to wanting to save the Kree, she also wanted to restore the Kree's honor by taking out the Annihilator. And she wanted to kind of be that savior for her people. And I think that's always where a lot of these villains or antagonists that you see where they're coming from, but they go about it the wrong way. It kind of comes down to hubris. It always comes down to hubris.
Yeah.
Do we think?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, do we think Carol knew when she went there to destroy the Supreme Intelligence that it was going to have that horrible of an effect? Because it's like, I like to think as a hero who I love in this franchise that she wouldn't have gone to, like, I understand why she did. She needed to free the planet from the Supreme Intelligence, but I'm like, if she knew that was going to happen, which I assume she didn't, if it was going to, destroy the sun, get rid of the ocean, and also make the atmosphere unbreathable, she probably wouldn't have done it. But I was kind of like, that was something that I just would have liked to have seen more of, like at least her grappling with that or her process with all that kind of stuff. It was just like because I'm watching all through all this and I'm like, wait a minute, how did all this go? Because we just see her like fly there and blow it up. There's no kind of like pre-thought process as to why. I mean, we know why like she did there. We know what the Kree wronged her, but it's just like it feels like there was another really interesting gap they kind of needed to fill in there and they didn't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that, but it's like it feels like that would have helped me a little bit with her motivation.
I don't think you're crazy about that at all. I think what it is once you ask that question, what are you really asking of the audience? Which is like, understand that when you unilaterally take out a leader and that place descends into civil war, it might ultimately be your fault. No matter how the civil war like ends up, they're gonna call you the Annihilator, and they're not gonna be wrong. From a certain point of view, to Star Wars it for a little bit, but yeah, like there's a lot of stuff. The stuff with the Skrulls, I think they figured out a way to get out of it early without having to deal with like the ramifications of a refugee race again. Also, without having to deal with Secret Invasion, by adding in a fun cameo. Like, I imagine there's a version of this movie where the Skrulls have to get to Earth through some other method, but somebody at some point was like, if Nick Fury sees a Skrull and doesn't say anything, we've really shot ourselves in the foot here. Like, do we put his wife on the space station? Like all these sorts of things would come up. So it just became easier and more marvelly to add in another character cameo that's able to like take that up and ultimately makes the scene about Carol where it's like, you could stand tall without having to stand alone. And that really worked for me. But there's a lot of times in this movie where I could feel a narrative gap. But the reason I'm feeling that narrative gap is because to deal with it is so outside what this movie's trying to do, which is just kind of give us this fun poppy adventure with some little extra fun layovers along the way. But yeah, there's if they ever do want to return to even the consequences of this movie cosmically, I'm not sure necessarily that the Marvels are making things better as much as they're doing the thing which is the overall arc of this movie, which is they're patching holes just as fast as possible. But whatever huge event is coming for the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the future, it's spiraling out of everybody's control and causing a whole bunch of collateral damage.
And they were patching literal holes, as that's, I think, one thing they could have done to maybe spend a little less time is we didn't need the full backstory of jump points. They could have just been like, holes in space. What do you mean holes in space? Holes in space. And then we could just kind of move on from it and spend a little bit more time with the trio together. And I keep going back to MTF in the Twitch chat. Always shout out our live viewers and I mean everyone who's tuning in after on the podcast network because you're all subscribing. We love that too. It's great. Leave a 5-star rating and review. But MTF keeps making some great points in chat, and he says, "I wish Valkyrie had more screen time with Carol." I do too. I wonder if that could just maybe have to do with like if they didn't want to have to pay Tessa Thompson that much money, and the longer she was there, the more they'd have to pay her. But
I mean, I think it's her next film's with Nia DaCosta, so I think this reads more as a favor to me than anything like sort of. And I think I heard in an interview Nia DaCosta talked to Tessa Thompson before accepting the job, just being like, "Is Kevin Feige an asshole? Like, tell me now, because I don't want to like sign on and learn this." And Tessa Thompson's like, "No, absolutely, he's going to be cool. Like, don't worry about it." So I would love more of that. And you know what? Bring Nia DaCosta back if she wants to and give us that, because it's obvious if you have the director directing close to things that they actually want to do, it makes for a better installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Bring back Nia DaCosta for as many things as possible. But here's my questions to both of you.
Yeah.
Because we're obviously going to start, and this wasn't on the rundown because I didn't think about it again until right now. But on the musical planet, which we're going to talk on more later, I didn't notice this live, but my partner Ava did, as well as a couple people in the Agents of Fandom chat brought it up. But Carol is wearing a gown, a dress, a garb, whatever you will, of before she turns into her amazing Captain Marvel dress that just was outstanding. She's putting like a thing on her head, lesbian flag colors. And now that Carol and Valkyrie She was very adamant about how this is just a business arrangement. It was just she's helping out a friend on this planet, that marriage of hers. But man, the Carol and Valkyrie, there was some sexual chemistry there. I know I'm not making it out. Have they banged?
Yes.
That's what I said too. I grabbed my wife and I went, oh, they fucked.
Oh man, I didn't even really think about it like that. Like I'm not necessarily that far. I was like, I wonder if there's a relationship here. My mind wasn't immediately like, I wonder if they're fucking. I mean, it was great to see. It was great to see Valkyrie for sure. But I don't know. After getting in so much trouble with referring to Loki and Mobius as a bromance, I'm now terrified to weigh in on any Marvel potential ship or anything out of fear of just completely having some fan base come in and completely annihilate me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most comic-based thing. Two characters appear to each other and they seem to like each other. Of course, they're fucking. Like what? It's more like you have to prove the negative to me before you have to convince me that these two people don't have chemistry. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if one has access to the Bifrost now, apparently, and the other one is just like going through space alone and with an alien flirkin. Like, absolutely. I hope they were kind enough to each other to hook up a couple of times.
I'm just like imagining she figured out a way with the different sorcerers and sorceresses of New Asgard to use Zeus's thunderbolt to summon the Bifrost. That's my current headcanon about that one. But let's dive into kind of our favorite moments throughout the movie. We can start with the aforementioned musical planet because that was the musical was a lot of fun, and just the whole singing planet I thought brought some really great humor with Brie Larson just being so like her character being so against it. Then by the end, Monica and Kamala are like, yeah, and they're dancing around. Like it was just absolutely incredible, I thought. And anytime you give me Brie Larson singing, I want more. I want more. Shout out to Scott Pilgrim Takes Off coming out on the new anime coming out on Netflix, because give us more Brie Larson singing.
Yeah, I missed the part of that sequence they obviously cut out. That's what I'll say about that. If you're gonna take big swings, like my favorite things about this movie are what seems like on paper big swings. The Flurkin solution set to Memories by Cats seems like a big swing, and they pull it off. Laughed through the majority of that sequence. The musical planet, I liked where they were going with it, and then they after they get there, there's like a jarring cut where they all walk into the room to meet Prince Yan, and Monica's holding like 2 margaritas or something, like 2 space drinks. They're just never mentioned why she has those and what happened. And I'm like, we were robbed of at least one more musical number on that planet. And then they sort of like cut back and forth between like the big dancing musical number to Kamala and Monica sort of commenting on it. And I'm like, stop reducing the musical. Like, you obviously have dancers. You obviously have some fantastic costume design. And you obviously have the natural talents of Brie Larson to sing. And then, Kamala Khan, we set up as a character, loves to dance. She had a musical sequence in her thing. So why did it get limited down? It felt like some test audiences maybe didn't like it, so they kind of had to pull back and streamline that part of the movie for me. But I would love to someday see what we missed out on in terms of songs on the musical planet.
I think this movie missed out on a great opportunity. Ruben, like, fire me a timestamp, 40 minutes and 30 seconds on the live, because I already know I want this clipped. But this movie missed out on a great opportunity. For one, it could have also utilized this to explain Carol's backstory to Monica and Kamala while on that planet, to give Brie Larson an I'm Just Ken moment.
Yes.
Like, don't give me a full song. Give me a full song that I'm going to want to listen to and go back to every single time I listen to the soundtrack of this song. Like, I have it be stuck in my head for 2 weeks after the movie. You could have done that.
Well, what they did do is Carol Danvers, Disney princess, confirmed.
Yes.
So she's in a whole other part of the Venn diagram now. She could be part of entire other Disneyland after shows. So at the very least, we got the full-on princess title for Princess Carol Danvers.
I need her to be in that little group get together of the Wreck-It Ralph threequel where they all bring. I need Captain Marvel there next time. Adam, what did you think of the musical sequence? And then as well, lead me into like one of your next favorite parts of the film, whether it be Flurkins or any specific individual moment that stuck out.
Well, I did enjoy the musical, that the singing planet, but I got to say, what was so funny to me is that when we first get there, I'm not a big musical person myself. And then we get there and they start doing all this singing and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if this part's going to be for me. And then I see Kamala like vibing out, and she's almost like a catalyst to the audience too. For those of us that aren't crazy about musicals, I'm like, oh fuck, okay, if Kamala's going to be enjoying this too, like I have to be enjoying it. Like there's no way she can be having a good time and me not be having a good time. So by the time we left that planet, I was like, or at least by the time all the fighting started, I was like, you know what, I'm in. I don't care. The singing's awesome. So that part was great. We just to bounce back a little bit to the Valkyrie stuff too. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff just because any kind of interconnectivity when we see another character from another project, just bounce in something that simple, even if they're only there for 30 seconds, bounce in. It's like a nice reminder that these characters still exist in this universe, like, and to get to see those kind of moments, like immediately as soon as I see that, I'm like, and that was in the final trailer, and that didn't really bother me as much as it did a lot of people. But like, even knowing that going in, I was still just like, oh, it's going to be so great to see another character from just like an entirely other like franchise within the franchise. But I think anything too with the Khan family, especially was Muniba, her mother, I believe is her name. It's just like absolutely incredible. And then when Kamala's fallen from the sky and Monica's got to like learn to fly for the first time to save her, and she's like, I don't know how to fly, and Fury's like, you better learn or that girl's not going to graduate high school. That was like, I like audibly, my entire theater, like the six of us that were in there, everybody just busted out laughing when that happened. That was great. There was some, as I said, it's been 4 days since I've seen it, so it's not all that fresh in my head, but I know there was like 3 or 4 moments that I was just like laughing out of my chair.
Or at the end of that sequence where it's like, oh, it's fine. It's Carol.
That's great.
Oh, it's fine. It's Carol. My theater absolutely lost it at that one. But it's like, that makes sense, right? You're worried about anybody else, but it's like, Carol is invincible. And I might have missed it, but she has that moment in the trailer, which is hilarious because it's literally just like a clip from Invincible. But she says like, I'm invincible. She says that to Dar-Ben in the trailer, and she is. That's why Fury doesn't give a damn if it's her falling from the sky, because she is very invincible. And going back to that family dynamic, I want to shout out one of our writers and I guess now co-host of the Agents of Fandom Comic Corner, AF Parker, because Damon and AF had a really great chat on the last episode of Comic Corner, where they were talking about the new Marvel releases, new DC releases, but then also touched on the Marvels quick. And AF has such a great explanation about the cultural moments between the family members that meant so much to him, and why they were so awesome and they were so well done. And he talks about that a lot in the most recent episode of Comic Corner. So make sure you check that one out as well. But Dave, you mentioned that like the Flurkins, you thought it was really well done, and I couldn't agree more, because I have my partner's sibling, their partner, is not into Marvel movies at all. Like not even a little bit. And she has a little bit of PTSD because not only does she not like Marvel movies, but she hates Jeremy Renner. And one time I was like, what if I told you that Broadway star Adam Pascal is in a show, as well as, Haley Steinfeld and oh my gosh, who's Jack Duquesne, the actor who plays him. She really liked him too. And I'm putting all of these things in and just not saying that it's Hawkeye. And then I revealed what it was, and she was so pissed. But I was like, I actually think you'd like this one because they're a huge cat person. And not only was I like, cats everywhere for the third act, but there's a musical scene. And I was like, this is the perfect Marvel movie to pitch to a friend who doesn't like these type of movies and is more into that style of pop culture. But so how you felt like they landed it well? Kind of elaborate if you don't mind.
Please don't run. Let the Flurkins eat you. Please don't run. Yeah, it's a really smart use of the Flurkins. I know that Goose is Captain Marvel's sidekick in the comics, and but having Goose reunite with his true love, which is Nick Fury, and give birth to a whole bunch of egg babies in the comfort of Nick Fury's sanctum really resonated with me. Everybody who interacted with the Flurkins, be they cat actors or digital, I think did a fantastic job. And then the visual gag of tentacles greater than the volume of the cat they're coming out of, grabbing people who are never into it, is hilarious to me. And then putting it against memories is just chef's kiss. If you're gonna have cats eat people montage, that's one of the top tracks that would just leap to the top of my head. I'm glad they paid for it.
Kamala chasing after these terrified people, just being like, "I'm sorry," and then points the Flurkin at them as they put them in their stomach. Oh,
it's like laser cats.
Perfect. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing stuff. Adam, what did you think about that scene and how they just really leaned into the Flurkin story for the sequel? And additionally, I don't remember what I was going to ask you, so hit me with that one, and I'm going to try and think of it.
Well, you guys nailed everything perfectly, and especially Dave, like you said, I love when they just take these big swings like that. Even I always say it too, whether it works for me personally or not, I respect it anytime you're willing to just go out on a limb and try something different. That's kind of how I feel about these things, and that's exactly what they did here, and it worked great. I mean, but you guys nailed everything perfectly. That scene's 10 out of 10. That's like the one that I think I'm most excited when I go back for a rewatch. I'm most excited to watch again.
When you, I remember what my question was going to be, and when you were watching that scene and like beforehand, and all the eggs start popping up everywhere, did you have any idea that those were Flurkins? Because that actually just went totally over my head. I didn't even speculate that.
No, I didn't until or I guess no, because I was about to say I didn't until like the first one popped out, and I was like, we saw that poster with all the Flurkins, like, and I was like, and then it all clicked with me. But no, like until the first one popped out. For me. Yeah, like until the first, so I guess no, because until the first one popped out, I was like, "What in the world are what is going on here?" And I was like, "Okay, that's cats coming out of eggs." That's not a visual I ever thought I would see, but I was like, I'm all in, let's do it.
My exact thought, I don't know why this was my thought, but my thought process was, are Flurkins not mammals? Which, why would they be mammals? But like, my thought was like, oh, eggs. I would have assumed it was just like more of a mammal, like childbirth.
I really give it credit for that sequence and the Flurkins in general for bringing the goop to Marvel 2023. It's been a very goopy year for Marvel movies, whether it's Michael Douglas steering entire spaceships with his hands in goop, or MODOK's goop butt, which I very much enjoyed, or the Guardians 3, like human planet, not the organic planet, and the various types of goop there.
She-Hulk had a lot of goop. We got the goop in the post-credit scene of No Way Home. It's been a goop couple of years.
So much goop. And I kind of wish now there was another edit of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with the Beastie Boys songs in it, because we almost got Marvel 2023 movie with Beastie Boys songs in it. So close. I know they're not going to be happy to revisit Quantumania anytime soon. They could give us a little Disney Plus edit with some Beastie Boys in it. Why not?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And if there are other parts of this movie that you guys want to touch on and bring up that I did not prime you for, feel free to. But one of the last things before we go to post-credit scene that I want to touch on is, Adam, you brought up the love for connectivity, and I do too. It's my absolute favorite. I say this all the time. I tell this story, I swear, once a month on the podcast of like, I love the MCU because of Spider-Man, the animated series. Iron Man pops up. Captain America pops up. The X-Men are there. Then they do Secret Wars. Then they do Spider-Verse. And so as soon as they started connecting it in live action, it was a dream come true, because I wanted that in Tobey Maguire's movies. I wanted that in the X-Men movies. I wanted them to interact. And now they're obviously doing that in the MCU, and Kamala was so infatuated by that iPad at the beginning of the movie. I had no idea it was going to be foreshadowing for her having her own and bringing us back to the very first Marvel movie, Iron Man, with the post-credit scene that changed the game, that created the Marvel Cinematic Universe for us. And we get the same for the creation of not the Avengers, but the Young Avengers and or the Champions. I think for branding purposes, they're probably going to call it the Young Avengers. Adam, what did you think when all of a sudden Lucky the Pizza Dog is there and Kate Bishop walks through the door?
Before I dive into that, because you asked to just completely go off on another tangent, if there was something else I wanted to talk about, I realized there was something I wanted to bring up to you guys about Darby, and this is brief too. One thing that I noticed during the fight scenes with her is like, they're using these light powers and not just like necessarily punching, but they're doing the beams at her, and she kind of holds the bangle up and absorbs it and is able to use it. But like every time they get in a fight with her, they keep doing that. Like, and by like the second fight with them, like, I'm like, hey, maybe we just like get up and try to punch her. Maybe we just quit firing the beam at her. And they just kept it. It actually got to a point where this is like an annoying little complaint, I know, but it got to the point where I was like I was like, guys, we've seen her turn around and use this against you like 5 times now. Why do you keep doing the same thing? I don't know. But that's another thing that's just like, I'm probably maybe the only person.
No, not at all. If we're on the purpose of light powers and how they frustrate combat, since lightsabers don't have any weight, all lightsaber fights you just point at the target and you go like this. They can't deflect that. It's gonna move at the speed of light. So I hear you that like it may look cool sometimes, but if you're actually trying to win a fight, light-based weapons are so frustrating to me. Just as like cinematically, like I understand the need to make them like swords, or in this case, like I would even go for just shoot twice. So because if you could only absorb here, just shoot her twice at the same time.
Yeah, 2 different hands.
Light powers are such a weird suck black hole for people that like to nitpick films. So I'm with you. I'm glad that you saw it. Now that I've ruined Star Wars for you, you could go back and look at all the lightsaber duels and just be like, this is not how this weapon would work. But yeah, I feel you. I feel the light power frustration. It's very similar to like other types of superheroes where it's like, he's got a great shield. I'm like, then shoot his knees. We've been dealing with this. We know what this is based off of, but yeah, good call on that. I mean, that's also taking place after the fact where I love it because it works. But how deadly is a slapping scarf?
Yeah. The slapping scarf was hilarious.
I don't have time to deal with it in the sequence because we're on to bigger and better things. But he's like, use your scarf. I'm like, what, why?
Yeah.
And then the fact that she's not using it to like garrote or anything, but she just kind of like Indiana Jones whips it. I'm like, are there weights at the end of her scarf? Should have that been established in some sort of way? But yeah, if this movie stopped to slow down, we would have a ton of these problems, I think, which is part of why, like, I see why they made some of the editing choices they did, where they're like, hey, you're having fun, right? Off to this. Don't think about why you're having fun too much. Wait till you've streamed it your 6th time on Disney Plus, and then jump into the forums, and everybody will be on the same page.
Yeah.
So Kate friggin' Bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get just to finally circle that back after a little complaint corner right there. That was great for me because, not to jump the gun, but I had the post-credit scene spoiled kind of unknowingly like weeks before, and like I didn't even realize that I did. I saw somebody tweet it and I was like, oh, that's probably bullshit. Like, there's just no way they're going to do that. And then they did it, but I had no idea about the Kate Bishop stuff, which apparently that was also out there too. So I'm super thankful I was able to avoid that. But I mean, we've all been wondering since Hawkeye, like, okay, why is she just not here? Like why is she not popping up in anything like street level stuff? I mean, not a lot of room for her, like out in space doing things like, fighting with the lights and all that, but it made so much sense here. And I was just like, oh, this is perfect. Like, I see what they're going to do. I will say when she was like, I think Ant-Man has a daughter, I was like, no, it's okay. You guys can just go, just the 2 of you and America Chavez can just kind of go do your thing. I don't think we need Cassie. It's okay. But no, when we first you see the bow and we see Lucky, I was like, oh, we're doing this. This is so cool. And it was such a pleasant surprise.
It makes sense that she did mention Cassie Lang, just because I feel like so much of what Kamala Khan knows about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is from Scott Lang's book and podcasts. And so it does make sense that Cassie Lang would be at the top of her list. But it's hilarious. Damon hasn't been here throughout the live show, and then he just popped into the Twitch chat as soon as we started talking about Kate Bishop, who he's just the biggest Hawkeye fan, and of course Kate Bishop is the #1 Hawkeye. But it just got me so excited for the potential of the Young Avengers, and that was the first audible reaction I've had in a Marvel movie for a while. Because now, just like being in the industry, you find out things you don't want to find out, you get spoiled about things, and like No Way Home had so many of those great moments, but we knew all of them were coming. And things like that. And so this was the first moment that I had like a fall back in my chair, freak out, accidentally yell, seeing Lucky and then seeing Kate. You got the purple on, Dave. How excited were you to see Kate Bishop and the finally are mentioning, and what's the word I'm looking for?
She's forming a team.
She's forming a team. They're acknowledging the existence of all these young heroes.
They're acknowledging the existence of all these young heroes, and even though there is a lot of, previously on content at some points in this movie, they're also acknowledging that you should be watching Disney Plus. Because if you haven't, you don't know who Kate Bishop is. You're like, what is the girl from Bumblebee doing here? And why does she have a cute dog that eats pizza? But those things are going to be important. And so many of the potential successors, be they Avengers or Young Avengers, were sort of first planted in that show. So it's a great sign of confidence that, unlike doing something that promises a future that none of us has seen, like Harry Styles and Pip the Troll, this is sort of being like, we know these things are important and we are going to make them important in cinema. So my initial reaction was like, great, doubling down on Disney Plus. My second was, yes, I'm glad you've also realized Iman Vellani is your star. She should absolutely be the center of your next big team up movie. And I'm glad that they saw it and liked it enough to not make it a mid-credit scene, but to just make it the actual legitimate end of the movie.
It's the future of what it sets up for Kamala. And it's like you said, I don't know that she'll necessarily be the leader of the team, but the assembler of the team and the heart of the team. And it gets me so excited. Like, we're near the end of here. We got to get out of here. I got to talk about the Tuesday's NBA slate of games in about 30 minutes here. But let's quickly kind of draft our own little Young Avengers roster from what we've seen. Who would you like to see be part of this group? Who would you like to see omitted, whether it be Cassie? And are there any characters that we haven't been introduced to yet that you would like to see be part of this group? I think because we're going into the multiversal saga, America needs to be there, just like you said, Adam. Maybe not as like part of the main Earth team, but I think she's going to have to team up with them to help solve multiversal problems, especially if they end up being like their own little Secret Wars group, and that's one of the groups that we follow. The next one I want to throw on the table, outside of maybe the super obvious, is Wiccan. Wiccan would be my first introduction. We're going to get him in the Agatha show, and I would love to see him as part of this team.
Yeah, it would be great to get Wanda's kids back from whatever universe where they still have powers. We got to figure that out first. But yeah, I want to definitely throw America in there. I think Cassie Lang deserves to be in there just so she could do something for herself finally. I think that'd be great. I love the Ant family and the concept of what that is, but she can also be like a female Ant-Man, and Ant-Man not being part of the original Avengers in the MCU was something that like almost happened, but then didn't. So it'd be fun to have that from the team from the start. And then, yeah, I think you could bring Riri Williams in after Ironheart airs, or I don't know that much about Ironheart, but I would like, you need one person that is like quote unquote the scientist or whatever. And you had that with Bruce and Tony. So I think you could put them together into one so that Riri could be their tech person while all these other
Riri, Cassie, and Viv Vision.
Yeah, do it. Ooh, Viv Vision would be great. Yeah, if we get Vision Quest before this happens, throw them in too. But yeah, just all the youngins except maybe Scar. Yeah. I don't know if we need a Hulk.
Drop him in a third act randomly when you need a Hulk, but don't have him be part of the team. Adam, feel free to draft another character, but also I want to throw this to you. Do they, in now 2025's Captain America Brave New World, do they give Patriot some powers in this movie, and does he also become part of the Young Avengers?
That would be great. No objections here for that. I mean, they got to replace Cassie with somebody since she's not going to be on the team, So no, but I don't know. That'd be great. I haven't even considered that. The biggest thing, I also don't want Scar, at least not until he gets a haircut. They got to do something to figure that out. I'm not sure. And as somebody that's not familiar at all with the comics and the Young Avengers team, Wanda's other child, Speed, is he also a member? I think that's his name, right? Speed. Is he also a member? Is it both of them? Okay, cool. Yeah. As long as we get to see both of them, then pretty much the other team that you drafted, I'd be perfectly happy with that. I don't know if this also may be just a complete shot out of left field. For the next Spider-Man trilogy, bring in Miles Morales and have him be on the team too. Fucking do it.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. Or do you guys think we aren't going to get this team until after FF, and we'll get a older Fantastic Four, so we get Iron Lad capability? Or is there just too much Kang in the air for that to be possible?
That brings up a good point, because one of your co-authors for Marvel MCU, the Reign of Marvel Studios, Joanna Robinson, who, if you have never listened to the House of R podcast, that's what we aspire to be. Mal and Joe are absolutely incredible. They are the cream of the crop of podcasters for covering Marvel stuff, or anything really. And the whole crew that you guys have at the Ringer is just all incredible. Dave, Van, Charles, Jomi, the whole podcasting crew, you guys just crush it over there. But she mentioned in House of R that she had heard Jeff Loveness, who was supposed to write the Kang Dynasty movie, they potentially moved away from that because they might be moving a bit away from Kang in general. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think would maybe Iron Lad be in the cards if they stick to Kang Dynasty, and maybe not? This is theorizing, guys. This is not inside information. It's theorizing.
Right.
Do you think Iron Lad would maybe be a part of it if Kang is too, and not if he isn't?
I think they have an entire year before they even have to think about solidifying that as any sort of possibility. I do hope that Jeff Loveness isn't gone completely. I know he got kind of dragged by some people for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but it's funny now that the buzz is that they are having him sort of undo Kang, because he was the one who had to redo Kang when they saw the end of Loki, and they're like, "Oh, this is our guy. What if we did more Kang?" So I feel for him as a writer who has to untangle it, but I also am positive about the prospects, given that now we only have Deadpool 3 to deal with next year in terms of movies, and then we could sort of reorient, given how we're feeling. If it needs to be recast but still Kang, then doing that by introducing Nathaniel Richards and sort of spinning out from that, so you're not dealing necessarily with the same actor, is completely viable. I also think it'd be really smart to do an older Fantastic Four, but maybe once we see who's cast as the actual first family, we will figure out sort of what era we're dealing in. But you have to kind of go a little bit further down the Fantastic Four storyline before you even get to Nathaniel Richards. And but I do think it'd be really fun if everybody's like, "Oh, don't worry about Kang. Don't worry about Kang. Fantastic Four introduces 3 different threats and also a little Nathaniel Richards." And if you read the comics, you're like, "Oh, they just did everything. They just did everything instead of picking one thing." I think there's some fun in that chaos, because we need chaos in this multiversal saga a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so too. And I definitely think this is something Damon and I have talked about, host of the Comic Corner, a little bit of that. If they want to pivot away from Kang, yeah, maybe they can introduce some Doom and things like that. But the overarching villain of these phases can just be the end of the multiverse. It doesn't have to be a specific Thanos bringing everybody together for this Infinity War-like fight. It can just simply be the multiverse is ending. Incursions are happening all over the place, and you have these individual villains, but the villain itself could be the end of the MCU. But let's talk about this post-credit scene, because this is that in itself. It's multiversal shit. We see Beast! The X-Men, the first X-Men introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Second, stupid me, Charles Xavier, in Multiverse of Madness. But they mention Charles in this one again. We get Beast, and we get Maria Rambeau as not Captain Marvel, not Photon, not Spectrum, but Oh my God, I'm forgetting what she was called in
Binary.
this one. Binary, right? Thank you, Adam. What was your reaction when you see Beast? You see, so we're obviously knowing it's another multiverse, it's another universe. What was your reaction to this scene? Because I, for the second time in 5 minutes, audibly freak out.
Oh yeah, that was definitely an audible gasp for me, and again, the other 6 to 10 people in my theater. Everybody screamed, and to the point where we all kind of looked around like, "They're doing Beast! Holy shit, they're doing Beast!" But then, like when I saw it, because like I mentioned earlier, somebody that I follow on Twitter quoted that like the Beast was going to be in a post-credit scene, and was like, "Wow, why would you spoil this for other people if it's true?" And when I'm like, "Well, you're doing the same thing." So
Yeah.
what? So like when I first saw it, I was like excited, and I was like, "Wait, what? I did get that spoiled for me." It was a really weird feeling of like excitement versus also like, "Wait, I actually already knew that," even though I kind of didn't know it. Like I just convinced myself that it wasn't true. But that was super cool, and it feels so much more significant than seeing Charles Xavier, because Wanda just snaps his neck and then all the Illuminati's dead within 2 minutes of meeting them, and it feels like Beast could actually, and Binary and whoever else is in this universe with them, could actually have like a really big part to play in whatever story they have to tell next, and bringing Monica back to Earth and that kind of stuff. So this is like exponentially more exciting for me. I mean, it completely changes the game. I know they've marketed a lot of different things as this changes everything. This is the big point, but like this actually does feel like the first thing that I've seen that really does change everything.
And Loki, and we got it at the same time. The finale of Loki and this, and we got it at the same time. So exciting. Dave, well, I have lots of questions I want to throw at you from like comic things that they're pulling such from. But first off, what was your reaction when you saw this? Did you have any of it spoiled, or was it a complete surprise?
I was told about this scene, but when I was told, there was just a character called Doctor. I wasn't told it was Beast. So that happened to be. I'm very thrilled, first of all, because the more fully transformed beasts we could get on screen, the better. The sort of like half and half that they did with both iterations on screen, given different time periods that they were set, always sort of frustrated me. Because that's a very quick transition in like the animated series and some of the comics I've read. So I love seeing him. I love that Kelsey Grammer's voice is in it, because it is a very soothing, very how I imagined Beast voice. Probably again has a lot to do with the animated series, which we're getting another season of next year. That's a good point to bring up too. And
you can check out our interviews with the people scoring that show, the Newton brothers, on the Agents of Fandom YouTube page, as well as Lenore Zan, the voice of Rogue herself, up on the agentsofandom.com YouTube page. All right,
fantastic, yeah. And then now I have Deadpool hype. I'm very scared for this Beast that I've just learned to like, because I don't know how many years Kelsey Grammer is going to be around to do anything physical on a set, even if it's just as reference. So I'm very interested to see what happens when Deadpool collides with the X-Men universe. The one downside of this is Teyonah Parris turns it up to 11 when she sees her mom again alive. And it's in a mid-credits scene, and then immediately it's like, and Beast is here, and we're in the X Mansion, and I'm just like, dude, she just gave like her peak performance in this movie. She finally got the thing she wanted. Yeah, so she performs the hell out of it, but at least they give her the tag of like, oh shit, at the end, and I can't wait to see where she pops up again, because I think she did a great job, and now she needs to fight her way out of another universe.
Adam, do you think she's going to be in Deadpool 3 now?
She has to be, right? There's just this will seem like such a missed opportunity if Deadpool 3 doesn't touch on this at all. If that's not, maybe they're in that universe. I mean, we see in Deadpool 2 when he's like, they couldn't dust off one of the famous X-Men, and then like they're all in that room and they close the door. So we know Beast is in that universe. So maybe this is the same one. Maybe that's something Deadpool 3 picks up. Maybe Beast walks into another room and Deadpool and Wolverine are sitting in there. Who knows? Maybe Wolverine just recruited Deadpool to the. There's just the possibilities are endless. But like
Wolverine's
it feels like
on so many timelines because
Right.
it isn't after Days of Future Past he returns to a timeline with that Beast and with Jean alive. So it's like
that's what I should just
so many
said in chat as
iterations.
well. I love that theory of like, what if that's the same Beast that Wolverine returns to in Days of Future Past? What if Monica's now in that universe? I think that would be incredibly interesting.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see them touch on anything like that for sure.
Dave, if you have it, great. If not, don't worry about it. But what is Binary a character from comics as well? Is that an iteration that one of the Rambos has had in comics before?
It is. So it wasn't completely unexpected. I've been calling her hashtag Binary because the suit, it looks like a binary suit if you Google like binary Marvel costume. But they've extended the stars in a certain way on her chest where it sort of looks like a hashtag. So this is one of those weird things where I saw it at a press screening and I'm like, people are going to freak out. And then I opened the internet the next day and it was just like almost entirely there. And I was like, oh, it does look like a hashtag if it's low res. So hashtag Binary. I want to see her come back. But yeah, it's another variant like your photons, like your spectrums of people who've had Captain Marvel-esque powers.
I love what I love about that too is my favorite what if idea was essentially what if Maria Rambeau beat Carol Danvers in the race and she became Captain Marvel, and that's what they've kind of done twice now. And so that gets me really excited. The multiverse is wide open.
Yeah, this one's weird because this one doesn't have a kid.
Yeah,
we could tell. And like she had a kid by the time she lost the race. So I don't know what's up in this universe. And hopefully we get to learn about it and it doesn't join Harry Styles in the further what ifs.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10 because while there are many small flaws, all the good parts about it far outweigh them. And so I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Adam, what do you give the Marvels as a score ranking?
I'm right in that 7 to 7.5 range for me. And then I don't know if we're 7.5 range for me.
You can fire the MCU ranking out at the same time too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw that in the rundown, but you didn't ask me, and I was like, I don't want to step on a future question. But yeah, for me, it's probably right around somewhere in the middle, which is not about, like, I know a lot of people were in this world of extremes now, where if it's not your favorite thing ever, it means you absolutely hate it. But that's not at all how I feel about the movie. I had a great time, and it lands somewhere right in the middle for me, which is still good. That means there's 16, 17, 18, however many projects that it's better than, which is, I think, is still pretty good.
Dave, ranking out of 10, and where would you put it in the context of the MCU?
So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I was unaware half 0.5s were possible, but 7.5 if that is possible. Thank you, Adam. Because it really does, it oscillates in the moment. Like, it's going to be a solid B movie throughout, but it jumps to like B plus and goes down to like B minus as the movie's going on. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. And then here on my list of 33 Marvel movies that I have, some of which I've watched a lot more, but I've watched at least all of them twice. I have the Marvels at number 18. It falls just below Thor Ragnarok for me, but above Black Widow.
I like it. I think I have it in the upper mid tier. It's kind of in the same realm for me as Spider-Man Homecoming, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and definitely the top half, but still closer to half than the number one. So considering that I love all of these movies, even my bottom 3 MCU movies of Thor, The Dark World, and The Incredible Hulk, if I only had cable, I would still be watching them on cable every single time they come up. I love these movies. So high praise for the Marvels. Definitely go see it in theaters. I'm going to try and catch it as soon as I can in theaters. And also make sure you join us either for a live show or wherever you get your podcast for our Loki episode 6 breakdown. Live show is Tuesday with Paul from Heavy Spoilers. We're going to be breaking down all the Easter eggs as well as reviewing it. And that's at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern time, or I think that's 8 p.m. British time for since Paul's in the UK. But before we get out of here, Dave, where can the people find us on socials? Tell us about each of the podcasts you co-host? Not just one
Oh
of them,
man.
each
Okay.
of them. And then as well, where can people find MCU The Reign of Marvel Studios?
Well, MCU The Random Marvel Studios, super easy. Go to the MCUbook.com. You'll find a link there to various stores, your Amazons and your bookshop.orgs, all those sorts of things. You could find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as DA7E. You could find me on Threads and Instagram as Grumpy DA7E. And my activity on those platforms will match the name. And let's see, you can find me on the Fighting in the War Room podcast every week, everywhere fine podcasts are found. It's been going on for almost 12 years now with my friends Katie Rich, Matt Patches, and David Ehrlich. You could find me at patreon.com/DA7E and Neil, where my friend Neil Miller and I are trying to heighten our appreciation of how movies are made by having 2 podcasts every week. One that's about a movie that we watched. We're in Kaiju Cornucopia November, so we just talked about Pacific Rim. We're going to talk about Shin Godzilla next week. And then we also are doing a Twin Peaks rewatch on that channel. And then you can find me on Trial by Content on The Ringer, where this week we'll be talking about most unnecessary prequel films. And there is already some buzz that, we're going to deal with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine on that with some misbegotten X-Men origins.
I was just going to say, count me, there's some X-Men origins involved in here. And we'll get a special shout out to Ryan Reynolds' original Deadpool.
Would never forget.
As much as we would like to. Adam, we got so much on the website right now. I know. Check it every day. But tell me about some of the things that we got coming up.
Well, before I tell you about what we've got coming up, I've got to praise the whole team for doing a great job coming together on the Marvels content. We've got post-credit scene, ending explained, Easter eggs, full review, all that kind of stuff for everybody up there coming up. And also, again, just before I dive into coming up, I have to say I have to sing the praise of The Killer now on Netflix from David Fincher. That is just an absolutely incredible movie. I got a review up of that just posted this morning that I'm very proud of. But that if you guys have 2 hours, there's not another movie up there that I would recommend. That's incredible. And then coming up, we have Aisha, who has been in the chat. She's got a review of the new Hunger Games, I believe, the Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, I believe it's called. She just saw that late last week, so that'll be coming out. I am at the very conclusion of phase 2, for me, the true conclusion of phase 2 with the MCU rewatch retrospective review journey, and I'm now at Avengers Age of Ultron. That'll be coming out later this week. And yeah, I'm just going to repeat the same thing you said. Just check it every day, because there's nothing up there that we have that like won't satisfy you. That we have every single thing that anybody could ever ask for on the website.
Couldn't agree more. Make sure you check out agentsofandom.com, at Agents Fandom on Twitter and TikTok, Agents of Fandom on all the other socials, available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much to those who tuned in live today. We